Not gonna lie, yeah, I'm at the top. I don't even wanna be involved the way I am because I want it all quicker, and I ain't stopping till.
In the way that wrestling media works is typically somebody with a pretty big follower count will set the standard, and then everybody just kind of conforms behind it. And this framing of every conversation is very difficult to break. In fact, it's almost impossible to break. So when you see it forming, you have to kind of jump in almost immediately and do something about it. But I realize that there is no point. Some people live in a wrestling bubble and they choose to do that. And I don't need to pop that bubble. I just need to just stand on the outside and watch. So what is happening here? Well, there was the WrestleMania poster. That the WrestleMania 42 poster was released. It's along with the shoe campaign that they had the previous day where everybody is just walking around in shoes. Ended up being the full WrestleMania poster with Cody Rhodes and CM Punk and Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns sitting at a table. Paul Heyman's there, Triple H is there. And it's just a poster for WrestleMania. That's really all it is. It's not anything out of the ordinary. And upon seeing this, people got extremely mad that Brock Lesnar was on the poster. Now, that leads to some of the more ridiculous comments that have been made about Brock Lesnar and how he's not as famous as Rhea Ripley. He's not as over, or he's not as big a draw as Rhea Ripley. And I'm floored by this. And I say to myself, the narrative has already formed with Brock, right? Like, there's a certain section of wrestling Twitter that will literally pick, one guy. And it's not based off of talent, ability, charisma, drawing ability. They'll claim all those things are what they're looking at. But what really it boils down to is, did this person hurt my feelings at one point in time? Was this person mean to me or somebody else at one point in time? If you were mean at any point in time, you go down a peg or two. And so now they're trying to lift up Rhea Ripley. So they're trying to bring down Brock. Now, I'm not going to tear down Rhea Ripley in this video because I like Rhea Ripley. I think most people do. Despite the demon tattoos and the Gooner bait stuff, she's a very talented young lady with a lot of charisma and personality. I don't have a problem with Rhea Ripley. I have a problem with delusions, however. I deal with delusions all day, man. People who think they're the president of the United States, who think they're King Arthur, all kind of ridiculous stuff. And these tweets that I have seen rank right up there with some of the more ridiculous things I hear on a daily basis from people who are not quite oriented to time and place. All right, so this one comes from a very big wrestling podcaster, 42,000 followers just on Twitter. And he says, quote, Brock Lesnar's name has never meant less in professional wrestling. He doesn't draw money, affect attendance, or pop ratings like he did 10 years ago when he was undeniably box office. He doesn't actually matter. And I wonder how long it takes for TKO to stop lying to themselves and end this charade that he's still a big deal. So the narrative is forming. That was the first big account to really make that statement. Then we started seeing other, obviously, they're wrestling podcasters and guys who works in news sites saying, quote, if you think Brock Lesnar is a bigger star than Rhea Ripley in 2025, you're out of your mind and or are afraid of women. This is from a guy who works at Fightful. Another individual says, I would almost guarantee Rhea Ripley has sold more merchandise since SummerSlam than Brock. Historically, yes. Brock has been a bigger draw, but his 2025 return has produced almost nothing outside of one huge pop and vloggers making Gargano faces. Another one says Rhea Ripley is a bigger name than Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman in 2025. Another one says, and this is an actual site with 144,000 followers, names such as Rhea Ripley should be featured heavily in marketing campaigns like this. Ripley is as over as any name on the active roster. Promote the women too. They're a big deal. Not exactly a shot at Brock, but it leads into this one, which is a guy who's got 4,000, almost 4,500 followers. He's on the radio, apparently. He's a radio host. He says, the women have been the backbone of WWE programming this year, including NXT and Evolve. The women have put on the best PLE of the year in Evolution. Rhea Ripley is arguably the biggest star in WWE and has a better resume than Brock Lesnar the past 5 years. Put her on the poster. Now, that's just a taste of how ridiculous a lot of this commentary has gotten around Brock Lesnar and Rhea Ripley. Brock Lesnar specifically should be replaced with Rhea Ripley, not CM Punk, who's on the poster, not Cody Rhodes, who's on the poster, not Roman Reigns, who's on the poster. Brock specifically should be replaced. They targeting Brock. They're very mad at Brock Lesnar. All of these guys who, I don't know, I think they would call themselves feminists. They were attacking Brock Lesnar. And look, I'm not here to defend the honor of Brock Lesnar. I don't care if these guys like Brock or not. I think it's a foolish and delusional statement to say that Rhea Ripley at this stage of her career is a bigger star than Brock Lesnar. She's certainly very over. She's certainly the top female wrestler in WWE. But if we look at, I don't know, attendance for the last events, well, Brock Lesnar was on the poster for WrestlePalooza, which they all claim is a failure with no evidence. They say it's a failure because, well, ESPN didn't put out a press release on it. So they're right by omission. The fact that something else didn't happen makes what they say correct, which is also something they picked up from Meltzer, because Meltzer put it out there. Oh, it was a flop. It didn't work. They did 2 events. So dumb. Anyway, if you look at WrestlePalooza's attendance, 15,000 people in Indianapolis. Now go look at the attendance for Crown Jewel, which was in Australia, which is, of course, Rhea Ripley's home country. It was 13,000. All right? 13,000. Brock has only appeared on one pay-per-view all year. He's appeared on maybe 2 or 3 episodes of SmackDown. This guy, whose name I'm not going to say, says that, oh, Brock didn't move the needle when he was on television. Brock was on TV a grand total of like 10 minutes. And that's across the 2 or 3 episodes of Raw. He was like, when you start talking about quarter hours and things like this, of course, it's not really going to move if Brock shows up and he's gone literally 3 or 4 minutes later. If Brock does like one talking segment with R-Truth and then is gone for the rest of the show, are we supposed to now believe that Brock Lesnar is supposed to carry the rest of the show, even though he was only in like the first segment or the third segment or whatever and left? That's insane. I mean, you can look these things up. I mean, this guy who is you having these conversations, again, Brock has not made a whole lot of appearances in 2025. But it was announced that his return at SummerSlam got 75 million views. How can somebody who got 75 million views just on his return, and no doubt it was probably TikTok, Instagram, all that stuff put together, right? To say that that name does not matter is peak delusion, right? You might as well just say you're the president of the United States. You found the 11 herbs and spices dug up in somebody's backyard. You might as well just come up with some of the most ridiculous, asinine, inconsequential thoughts in the world. The guy got 75 million views and he was on screen for less than 5 minutes. I'm sorry. You can hate his guts all you want, but you're just lying. That's really that simple. People can look these things up. You are a liar. Now, take into account that Brock Lesnar does not use social media. So he can't even promote his own stuff. He doesn't have like an Instagram account or Facebook or anything like that. At least not that we know of, where he promotes his own stuff. All right. This is just what WWE or ESPN or Netflix or whatever put out. And he got 75 million views. That's insane. Okay. His segment with R-Truth, I think, got over 2 million views just on YouTube. And it was just him talking to R-Truth. That's it. Like, I don't understand why we have to lie. You don't have to like him. You just have to not lie. That's really all it is. Just don't lie. You hate Brock. You think he's a sex trafficker. Yeah, okay, whatever. Just stop lying. All right? Just cut it out. Just stop lying. I'm not saying that Rhea Ripley isn't a star. She is. But to say Brock Lesnar's name doesn't mean anything, you're lying. And you're misleading your audience. And then the guy, oddly enough, he says, I'll throw up some graphs if I have to. Throw up whatever graph you want. Throw up all the fucking graphs you got. Bury me in information. Unless that 75 million views is wrong, you got no argument. That's more people that's going to watch Rhea Ripley all year long. And that's money. Okay? That generates income for all of these different sites that WWE has posted it on. That's the reason why they post these things. Again, I don't need to tear down Rhea Ripley. It's not about whether Brock is a bigger draw than Rhea Ripley. I don't want to argue about that. That's stupid. I could just look at the attendance of the two events that they were featured on. One of them was in Rhea Ripley's own home country. And I could look at, okay, let's look at all the views. You want to talk about TV ratings? When was the last time Rhea Ripley was on a TV show? She's been on Netflix for the past 9 months. She ain't been on TV in forever. And then she barely wrestles on Netflix. Come on, man. Like, we can talk about Rhea being a great talent, being the future of the business. I can even agree that Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair and maybe even Liv Morgan, they should be on the poster. Maybe the poster shouldn't be all men. But we have these conversations all the time about these goddamn posters. Whenever they put a poster out, there's always complaints about who's on the poster. NXT put out a poster for Deadline. And people were upset that Tatum Paxley wasn't on the poster and she's the women's champion. Why do they have Mariah May on the poster? She's not the women's champion. Tatum Paxley is the women's champion. She should be on the poster. What was it, earlier this year? People was mad that Bayley wasn't on the posters. Now, this was like 2 years ago when she was the women's world champion. She wasn't on the posters. Bianca Belair was on the posters. Oh no, it's not fair. Bayley should be on the poster. These are things that are going on inside the wrestling bubble, and I feel like I'm watching goldfish just spin in a circle. Like, you just sprinkle some bullshit into the bowl and you start nipping at it. This is not worth discussing. This is not worth arguing about. This whole conversation is pathetic. And it's based on a really fucking false premise. You came up with this dumbass idea that Rhea Ripley is a bigger draw and a bigger star than Brock Lesnar with no evidence. But the issue is that it's misleading to his audience. It's misleading to the people who follow him. But it's what they want to hear. It's that simple. because I'm watching these goldfish and they've clicked up. They're a school now, a school of goldfish. This is what they want to hear. They want to hear Brock bad, Rhea good. So WWE should be behind Rhea Ripley, and they should just dump old Brock, and we don't need Brock Lesnar anymore. Okay, if that's your opinion, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. I disagree. I think ESPN, who asked Brock Lesnar to be on the show and probably gave TKO a little bit of money just to get him to come back, I'm sure they wanted Brock there. They might know a little bit more about this whole thing than we do. But, I mean, they didn't throw a parade for WrestlePalooza, so it failed. Because Meltzer said so. I mean, it is what it is. I can't argue with these people because they're not going to have a legitimate argument. You have to frame these things in a very specific way for them to even be close to correct. I just looked just because I was interested. The highlights to his match with John Cena got 5 million views on one channel. Just on the ESPN channel, it got 5 million views. And that's just on ESPN. I didn't even look to see where it was on the WWE stuff. When somebody has 5 million views about a month ago, he's pretty relevant. All right? You can say he's not relevant. Look, again, I don't want to argue about whether he's a bigger star than Rhea Ripley. But to say that his name doesn't mean anything is a lie. Oh, it's a lie from the pit of hell. And it's not like a factual miscalculation. It is a straight up fucking lie. And as a person who is supposed to be knowledgeable on these subjects, you're misleading the audience. You're not telling the truth. You could just say, look, we've moved beyond guys like Brock Lesnar because we want more, wrestling-centered performers, and Brock is not a guy who's going to go out there and bust his ass for 15 minutes to give us the best match possible. Rhea Ripley is. She's kind of going to go out there, kill it. She's super over. The fans love her. Why isn't she on the poster? I would say the same thing about Dominic Mysterio. Why isn't he on the poster? And if that was the conversation, we have the fucking WrestleMania poster looking like a Where's Waldo page. It'd just be 100 fucking faces on there. Why isn't he on there? Why isn't she on there? Why aren't they on there? So what? This is specifically happening because these guys want to lie about Brock Lesnar. That's really what it boils down to. They want to lie about Brock Lesnar because he hurt their feelings. Those many years ago when he talked shit about pro wrestling, when he said he didn't really give a fuck about pro wrestling, and the fact that he came back to pro wrestling, makes a ton of money by doing not so much in the business, they are angry about that. So everything sticks. It doesn't make sense that Brock Lesnar is trying to wrestle his way out of this. He was named 44 times. Who gives a fuck? Name everything he allegedly did in this whole situation. Again, that is stupid. And it's pointless to argue with these people because they just keep moving the goalpost. You're looking at Fishbowl and you're sprinkling flakes into it and then watching them react. That's all it is. And I'm not going to waste any more time on it. Thank you guys for your time. I just wanted to bring this to your attention. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
No one does it better.